This gorgeous, blushy pink, sparkly dress has been inspiring and dazzling audiences for over 80 years. But where has it gone? Was it lost in a fire? Could it have been stolen? Or was it recycled for parts for other costumes? Also, could this dress itself have been a recycled costume from a previous costume? Okie pokey weirdos, I'm Rev, and welcome to my world of cosplay shenaniganery. Let's talk some costume history. In 1939, Billy Burke wore this absolutely amazing dress in the movie The Wizard of Oz. The dress was designed by Gilbert Adrian and was described in the 75th Companion. I cannot stand this jacket, I am dying. We're taking it off. In the 75th Anniversary Companion, narrated by Jay Scarfone and William Stillman, and the way they describe their dress is, as quoted, "Layers of delicate pink tulle sprinkled with northern stars and frosty snow crystals. Adrian added a butterfly motif and gave Glinda wings in homage to the script's description of Glinda's gift of flight." Along with designing Glinda's costume, he had to design 3,210 costumes in total. He had a staff of 178 people to help him, but all of the Munchkins costumes had to be custom designed. There weren't costumes just laying around for little people during the time. Because so much time was going into creating the Munchkins costumes, a lot of other costumes had to be recycled from previous movies. At least costume pieces or even the fabrics. And this is where we get to the debate on if Glinda's dress was recycled from the San Francisco dress from 1936, 3 years prior. Through my research, I found a lot of people proving it, but also debunking it, never coming to a straight answer that has a reliable source. The largest majority of modern takes on this is that it is not the same dress. However, I have my own take on it as someone who is a costume designer and has done a lot of research on costume design in general. Another point up for debate is the dress's color. In San Francisco, the dress appears white because of the black and white. And then in Technicolor in Wizard of Oz, Billy Burke's dress looks pink. However, a lot of costumes while film was black and white had to be a different color than what they were actually attempting to portray. In Jezebel, that fantastic red dress is actually brown because the red wasn't picking up on film correctly. This goes the same for white. Most commonly, whites were actually pastel pink or pastel blue to get the color across, because it would be so washed out on black and white film if they didn't give the fabric some tint of color to bring the brightness down a bit so that all of the lights wouldn't be reflecting off of it like crazy. And yes, the dress from San Francisco in the recolor definitely was recolored on the more blue side. However, it does not make the recolor accurate. And it is also possible that the fabric was dyed slightly darker from the San Francisco dress. It was also argued that Billy's dress wouldn't have been recycled from a different dress because she was so famous. She would have gotten her own design, and yet that would not have kept Adrian from using tulle that was already around. He very commonly used tulle in plenty of his other projects. Also, Billy's fame would not have dictated this so much. She was a woman in the late 30s. We know that they did not give a flying fig about their ladies. They set both of their witches on fire and did not give either one of them enough compensation money to pay for their hospital bills, let alone for how much they should have gotten paid on set. While Billy was more famous than most of the rest of the cast and was treated a little bit better, being a woman, her popularity was not going to dictate how her dress was made. One of the ways that people debunk it is saying that the actress from Oz and the actress from San Francisco have a height difference. But it was only a height difference of 1 inch. Therefore, that would not be a huge reason to completely redesign a dress. To argue that the dress actually has been reused, David J. Hogan, the author of the Wizard of Oz FAQ, mentioned that it was reused, and even quoted Billy saying, "I look like a refugee from a German opera," when she first tried the dress on. And even going through the posts of people debunking that this dress is the same dress, I see people in the comments saying that they were teenagers or early 20s when they were working in that costume department. And yes, the dress was reused. Even though I would love to say that all of these people are not, it's still not technically a reliable source. So, with all of my research and seeing the various agreeing or debunking of this situation, I am going to personally say for me, I believe that the fabric of the skirt was what was reused. Looking at the pictures, the bodices are pretty different. Glinda's bodice comes down a lot lower in the front to create a little point, allowing the skirt to fluff up more around her hips. It's super easy to have a different bodice on one of these massive skirts. If you follow creators like Casey Renee or Bella Mays, they both create dresses like this all the time, and you could very easily swap out one of their corsets for a different one and still keep the same skirt. There's also the argument that the skirt holds out further on Glinda than in San Francisco. However, that comes from undergarments. You can wear a giant, boxy... This is the difference between a crinoline and a peigne. With peignés, it's more like you have baskets sitting on your hips. With a crinoline, it is a cone shape from your waist down. Because there is a huge difference between a Lolita dress with a petticoat under it and not. So it technically still could be the same fabric. What I'm thinking, because there are so many differences to the shapes and cuts, is that when Adrian decided he wanted this dress to be pink tulle, he thought, there is a pink tulle dress that I have already made that is being unused sitting off to the side. Why don't we just make use of this tulle and put it into our next dress? It already had stars on it, and they could have easily placed more, and it's very likely that they still had extra tulle from originally making the San Francisco dress to make the dress bigger for Glinda. And while that is my own take on this, we don't have any official evidence of if that is what actually happened. Because we don't have any stories from reliable sources of people who were there. You know, any kind of stories or written documentation from the big names that were in charge of that part of the costume. This concept also brings me to the Theseus's boat paradox, where if you've replaced enough of the wood, is it still the same boat? I.e., if you have changed the dress enough and only used the same fabric, is it the same dress? I personally would say that it is not technically the same dress, and that's why people are able to claim that they have debunked that it's not the same dress. As a cosplayer on a budget, I am constantly reusing pieces, taking things apart, and making new things out of them. This happened pretty commonly in the 30s and 40s in film because they wanted to make everything as quickly and as cheaply as possible. Even some of Marilyn Monroe's dresses were reused in other films. This was also because they were not thinking about any of these costumes becoming absolutely iconic and needing to be saved and protected. This era was really early Hays Code, where everything had just changed in the film industry, and Hollywood stars were just starting to get absolutely massive. In still trying to figure everything out, they weren't worried about preserving the historic costumes because they weren't historic yet. They were garbage, or possibly pieces that could be recycled for the next movie. It was always about the next step, not about what these things could become. Now the question is, where has this dress gone? One of the guesses is that it has been recycled again. And my list of movies of where it could have shown up again, but we have no exact evidence on if this is true, are Sweethearts from 1938, The Great Waltz from 1938, and Ziegfeld Girl from 1941. However, again, this is one of those debates where we don't know for sure because none of the big names officially put it in documentation or in writing of any kind telling us this is what happened. Another option was it was just too deteriorated. It was falling apart and some little assistant was told, go throw this in the garbage. And they very possibly didn't even know where that costume was from and was just following orders and was like, okay, dress is falling apart. In the garbage you go. Another option is that this dress could have been lost in a fire. Fires were very common back then, and there's a huge debate on what year the dress could have been burned, because fires constantly happened. There were all these massive lights that burst into flames quite often. Real flame was used on set really consistently for special effects and just to have candles on the set. And for films, a lot like one of my favorite black and white films that I still need to make a video on, Freaks, fires were started, allegedly, on purpose, so that you would lose all of the film and costumes and all other media involving any movies that were created that went against the Hays Code. Anything that was deemed inappropriate, let's get it destroyed. But what if the dress was stolen? Kent Warner was in charge of curating everything for the 1970 auction of all the Wizard of Oz items that they still had. Plenty of items had already been stolen, and it's still very common for a lot of Wizard of Oz pieces to be taken, even to this day. Well, Kent took some pieces himself. We actually have proof that he took some of the extra ruby slippers that were never worn in the film and sold them privately. Now those slippers are in a private collection and we don't actually know where they are. It's very possible that something like this happened to Glinda's dress as well, because it definitely was documented for the auction before the auction actually happened, but once the auction actually happened, the dress was not there. It's also possible that the dress was incorrectly documented when it wasn't actually there. Now let's move on. I mentioned shoes, and we're gonna keep on with shoes because Glinda's shoes were sold in that 1970 auction. I did hear in one creator's video that there were no shoes designed for this costume. Supposedly because Billy was wearing a cast on one of her feet for the whole filming, and yet I found these shoes on a listing for auction. I have no other sources claiming she was in a cast, so I would likely go with the auction shoes and claim that she actually did have shoes for this costume. And then they were sold again in 2000 for 25 grand. Classy shoes. The crown and wig were also documented for this 1970 auction, but I have not been able to find anything else on this crown, anything modern, aside from an article stating that it was made out of acetate gel. The brooch, necklace, all of her bling and bedazzlement was also auctioned off in 1970, and when I went looking for it online, I did find an auction for it from December of 2018. However, the site says it was not sold. And finally, we are to the wands. This is one of the things that will pop up like crazy if you try to look up any of the auction items from this costume, because the wand that was her test wand was selling for big money. It's called the test wand because it has clear crystals. If you look at the wand in the film, the crystals are rainbow colored. Originally, they had made the wand with clear crystals, thinking that it would look nice with the light reflecting off of it. But in Technicolor, the crystals really weren't picking up very well. So they went with the rainbow stones, that way you could see it on film, and they were taking full advantage of filming this in Technicolor. Because when you're cooking your actors and crew with those absolutely massive Technicolor lights, it better be worth it. And that is the information I have managed to dig up on Glinda's original costume from the 1939 Wizard of Oz movie. If you want to actually me in the comments, please make sure that you have a reliable source that you can call back to, because I'm going to put all of my sources in the description so that you can do some research yourself. Please do me the courtesy in having your own sources as well. I greatly appreciate everybody who makes it to the end of the video because those watch hours are super important. I do plan to do more costume history related videos now because I have a lot more work hours now in my part-time job, so I need to be able to make YouTube more part-time. Build videos take over 40 hours a week, which is definitely not a part-time job. If you would like to support me, the free way is those subs, comms, thumbs, and a ding. I would love it if you could just do that. Please and thank you. Otherwise, I do have my Patreon with my dance content. I am learning to be an aerialist at the moment. And I have my Ko-fi if you want any cosplay behind the scenes. Thank you ever so much for watching this video all the way to the end. I greatly appreciate you. Please be kind and supportive to others in these difficult times. And welcome to the madness. In the original 1930, J. Scarphone and William Stillman. In 1939, all of my thoughts were just gone. Woo! I'm already getting really hot in this jacket. I'm making sure I'm in frame, and then I'm going to put this little guy on the very top of the camera just above the lens so I actually look at the camera because I love looking at the viewfinder.